Sara had imagined her first day in an American college 1,000 times, but nothing could have prepared her for the real thing. As soon as she stepped onto the huge campus, she felt as if she had walked straight into a movie scene. Wide lawns glowing under the morning sun, colorful banners hanging from tall buildings, bicycles rushing past her, and students greeting each other with cheerful "Hey!" and "What's up?" that sounded so casual and effortless. She clutched the map the college had given her during orientation, but it might as well have been written in another language because every building looked bigger, taller, and more confusing than it did on paper. The scent of fresh coffee drifted from the student center, mixing with the sound of laughter and skateboard wheels tapping against pavement. Her heart pounded, not from fear exactly, but from the overwhelming feeling that she was starting something huge, something life-changing. She tried to remind herself that she had earned her place here through hard work, determination, and countless late nights spent studying English, yet she still felt like an outsider trying to enter a world where everyone else already knew the rules. As she walked toward the cafeteria, hoping to grab breakfast before her first class, she rehearsed simple phrases in her head. "Where is? I'm looking for. Excuse me." She didn't want to embarrass herself. But the moment she entered the enormous cafeteria with its bright lights, clattering dishes, and multiple lines of students moving quickly, she felt lost again. Which line was for breakfast? Which one was for coffee? Which one was for people who had a meal plan card, and which one was for those paying by cash? Everything moved so fast. People scanned cards against small machines, grabbed trays, picked up food, joked with friends, and walked away with the kind of confidence she wished she had. Sara chose a line that looked right: students, trays, food. She stepped in and waited. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. She noticed that no one in line around her had backpacks or student IDs hanging around their necks the way she had. When she finally reached the cashier, the woman looked up with a kind but slightly confused smile. "Honey," she said gently, "this line is for staff breakfast. Students go over there." She pointed toward a long line of students that stretched across the cafeteria like a snake. Sara felt heat rise in her cheeks. Her English wasn't the problem, but the situation made her feel small and foolish. She opened her mouth to apologize, but the woman waved her hand as if brushing the embarrassment away. "Don't worry," she said, stepping out from behind the counter. "First day, right? Happens all the time. I'll show you." Instead of making her feel worse, the cashier walked with her to the correct line, making small talk along the way. "You're gonna love it here. The first week is a little crazy, that's all." Sara nodded, grateful for the woman's kindness. After finally getting her breakfast, scrambled eggs, toast, and a cup of orange juice, she looked for a place to sit. Tables were filled with talking, laughing students. She didn't know anyone, and the idea of asking to sit with a group made her chest tighten. So she sat alone near the window, telling herself it was fine, that everyone had to start somewhere. As she ate, she watched students greet each other with excitement as if they had known each other forever. She wondered if she would ever feel that comfortable. She wondered if her accent would mark her as different forever. But she also felt a spark of determination. She hadn't come all this way to hide in corners. The morning wasn't perfect, but she had survived it. And maybe surviving was the first step toward belonging. After finishing her breakfast, she took a deep breath, stood up, and headed toward her first class. Today she decided she would try, no matter how many small mistakes she made. Because every beginning was supposed to feel strange. And because she believed that good things often started with a moment of discomfort. The campus seemed just a little less intimidating now. Perhaps the day would turn out better than she feared. Perhaps she would even make a friend. One small step at a time, she reminded herself. That was enough for now. Sara walked out of the cafeteria with her backpack slightly heavier than before, not because of books, but because of the feeling that every step she took mattered. She checked her schedule again. Communication 101, Building C, Room 214. It looked simple on paper, but as soon as she reached the main courtyard, she realized she had no idea which direction Building C was. The campus map she held fluttered in the breeze like it was mocking her confusion. Students walked around her with purpose, moving fast, chatting loudly, laughing, or checking their phones as if they had memorized the entire campus on their first day. Sara tried to follow one group for a moment, thinking they might be heading to the same building, but they suddenly turned toward the gym, leaving her standing alone again. She took a deep breath and forced herself to stay calm. Getting lost was normal, she reminded herself. Even students born here probably had trouble at first. She walked up to a signpost, but instead of building names, it only had arrows pointing to places like library, student center, and science wing. No Building C in sight. She considered asking someone for help, but every student around her looked busy, rushing to class or deep in conversation. She didn't want to interrupt or sound awkward. Still, she knew wandering aimlessly would only make things worse. Finally, she spotted a girl with a friendly face adjusting her earbuds near a bench. She didn't look rushed. "This is your chance," Sara told herself. She took a step forward. "Excuse me," she said, hoping her voice wasn't shaking. "Do you know where Building C is?" The girl pulled out one earbud and smiled. "Yeah. I'm actually heading that way right now. Come on, I'll show you." Relief washed over Sara so strongly she almost exhaled out loud. They started walking together, and the girl continued, "First day." "Yes," Sara admitted. "Is it obvious?" "Only because you look exactly like I did last year," the girl laughed. "I'm Megan, by the way." Sara recognized the name. She'd heard a girl named Megan talking loudly in the cafeteria line earlier, joking with friends about someone's ridiculous coffee order. Now she seemed even friendlier up close. "I'm Sara. Nice to meet you. So, Communication 101. Same professor I had. He's funny but talks fast. Don't worry if you don't understand everything at once." The reassurance made Sara feel lighter, as if someone had quietly removed a weight from her shoulders. As they walked, Megan pointed out helpful landmarks: the tutoring center, the quiet study lounge, the building where most students napped between classes. Sara laughed for the first time that day. When they reached Building C, it looked far less intimidating than the journey to find it. Inside, the hallways buzzed with conversation and the sound of lockers slamming shut. Megan pointed to a door down the hall. "Room 214 is right there. You'll be fine, really. If the professor asks for introductions, just say whatever comes to mind. Everyone's nervous on the first day." "Thank you," Sara said sincerely. "You just saved me." "Hey, we all need help sometimes," Megan said with a shrug. "Besides, you can help someone else next time." With that, Megan waved and headed upstairs. Sara took another deep breath and stepped into room 214. A few students were already seated, chatting quietly or scrolling on their phones. She chose a seat near the middle, not too hidden, not too exposed. Her heart thudded as she waited for class to begin. The professor walked in a few minutes later, a tall man with glasses and a stack of papers under his arm. "Good morning, everyone," he said with a booming voice that filled the room. "Welcome to Communication 101. Today we're starting simple. Find a partner and introduce yourselves." The words hit Sara like a sudden cold wind. Introduce yourself? Already? She froze in her seat for a moment, unsure of what to do. Students around her quickly paired up, greeting each other with easy smiles. She felt the familiar fear rising, the fear of saying something wrong, of misunderstanding someone, of looking foolish. Then a cheerful voice broke her panic. "Hey, I'm Megan." Sara looked up in surprise. Megan stood in front of her with a wide grin. "Professor moved me into this class last minute. Looks like we're partners again." The relief was so strong it almost made Sara laugh. Maybe this day wasn't trying to defeat her. Maybe it was trying to show her that every time she stumbled, someone would be there to help her back up. She smiled, feeling the first real spark of belonging. And for the first time that day, she believed she might actually be okay here. Sara felt a strange mix of relief and nervous energy as she and Megan turned their chairs to face each other. The classroom buzzed with voices as students introduced themselves, laughed awkwardly, or repeated questions they hadn't understood the first time. Sara was grateful that she didn't have to start with a stranger, though standing face to face with someone she'd just met still made her heartbeat quicken. Megan smiled brightly. "Okay, your turn. Tell me everything. Name, major, favorite ice cream flavor. Go." Sara laughed softly, and the sound surprised her. "I'm Sara. I'm studying media and communications. And chocolate." "Good," Megan said, nodding dramatically. "Strong choice. I approve." Sara relaxed a little. "Your turn." "Megan. Psychology major. And my favorite ice cream is mint chocolate chip, which people pretend to hate but actually love." Sara shook her head, smiling. It felt natural, easy even, so different from the anxiety she had expected. When the professor asked everyone to share what they'd learned about their partner, Sara felt her stomach tighten again. Speaking to one person was manageable. Speaking to the whole class, that was something else entirely. Students went in order. One by one, voices filled the room. Some were loud and confident, others were shaky. But everyone got through it. When Megan's turn came, she introduced Sara in a warm, upbeat tone. "This is Sara. She's a communications major and the only person brave enough to admit that chocolate ice cream is the best flavor." A few students chuckled. Sara's face warmed, but in a pleasant way. Then it was her turn. She inhaled, her hands gripping the ends of her sleeves. "This is Megan," she began. Her voice was quieter than she wanted, but steady. "She studies psychology, and she likes mint chocolate chip ice cream, even though she knows it's controversial." The class laughed again, and even the professor smiled. "Mint chocolate chip is always controversial," he said. Sara felt a rush of relief wash through her. She had done it. She hadn't stumbled. She hadn't forgotten any words. She hadn't frozen. She had spoken, and people had listened. As the class continued, the professor discussed communication techniques, body language, and why people fear public speaking. Every now and then, Sara caught herself nodding along. "Yes, that's me," she thought whenever the professor mentioned nervousness, fear of judgment, or overthinking every little word. When the lecture ended, she packed her notebook slowly, giving herself time to breathe. The moment she stepped outside the building, the warm midday sun wrapped around her like a soft blanket. She felt different, maybe only a little, but enough to notice. "You did great in there," Megan said, walking beside her. "I was terrified," Sara admitted. "Yeah, everyone is on the first day," Megan shrugged. "But you handled it well. And you're already doing better than you think." They walked toward the courtyard together. Students moved in every direction, some rushing to class, others eating lunch on the grass, a few tossing a frisbee near the library steps. The campus suddenly looked less enormous and less intimidating. Maybe because she wasn't walking alone anymore. "Do you have another class now?" Megan asked. "Not for an hour," Sara said. "You?" "Same. Want to grab coffee?" Sara hesitated for a tiny moment, not because she didn't want to go, but because she didn't want to seem too eager. But then she reminded herself of her promise that morning. Try. Just try. "Yeah," she said, smiling. "I'd like that." They headed toward the student center, where the noise of chatter and clinking cups spilled out the doors. For the first time since she'd arrived on campus, Sara felt like she was stepping into something rather than stumbling through it. She wasn't just surviving the day anymore. She was beginning to live it. And with that small but growing confidence, she knew this was only the start. If she could speak today, maybe tomorrow she could speak louder. If she could find one friend now, maybe soon she would find more. One step at a time, just like she had promised herself. The student center was buzzing with life when Sara and Megan stepped inside, the air filled with a rich smell of roasted coffee beans and the chatter of students taking a break between classes. The line at the cafe moved quickly, but to Sara it still felt overwhelming. Bright screens showing drink sizes, unfamiliar abbreviations, and fast-spoken orders that blended together into a blur. She stared at the menu, trying to make sense of options like cold brew, dirty chai, and Americano with room. Megan noticed her hesitation. "Want something simple?" "I usually get a latte. Easy to order, always good." "Okay," Sara nodded, grateful for the suggestion. When it was her turn, she stepped forward confidently, or at least she tried. "One latte, please," she said, accidentally stressing the last syllable. The barista smiled politely. "One latte." Sara felt her face heat up. "Yes, latte." She moved aside quickly, pretending not to notice the small mistake replaying in her mind. Latte. She knew the word. She had said it correctly dozens of times before. Why had it slipped out wrong now? Megan didn't make a big deal out of it. She just leaned closer and whispered, "That happens to everyone. I once ordered a large water without water. The barista still makes fun of me." Sara laughed, tension dissolving like sugar in hot coffee. They took their drinks to a small table near the window. Students passed by with backpacks bouncing on their shoulders, headphones around their necks, or stacks of books balanced in their arms. It felt like the whole world was moving, and somehow she was finally moving with it. "So why communications?" Megan asked, stirring her drink. "Because stories connect people," Sara said without thinking. "Even if they come from different countries or speak different languages, stories make things feel familiar." Megan smiled. "That's a great reason. Honestly, better than my reason. I chose psychology because I like listening to people talk about their problems. And because I talk too much myself." They both laughed, and for a moment everything felt easy. But ease was fragile. When Megan left to answer a phone call, Sara took a sip of her latte and accidentally spilled a few drops onto the table. She grabbed a napkin and wiped it quickly, but in her rush she bumped her cup and sent more coffee sloshing dangerously close to her notebook. "Oh no, 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 no," she whispered, rescuing the notebook just in time. A couple of students nearby looked over. They weren't staring for long, but the momentary attention made Sara's stomach twist. She hated being watched when she made a mistake, even a small one. She could practically hear her inner critic. "You can't even drink coffee without messing up." But then Megan returned, saw the damp napkin, and raised an eyebrow. "Disaster." "A small one," Sara admitted. "Well, congratulations," Megan said with a playful smile. "You've officially survived your first coffee spill on campus. That's basically a rite of passage." Sara couldn't help laughing. Maybe mistakes didn't always have to feel like failures. Maybe they could just be normal. As they finished their drinks and headed toward the courtyard, Sara realized something important. It wasn't the missteps that defined her day. It was how she kept moving forward despite them. And she was starting to believe she could keep going for a long time. When the afternoon sun dipped lower, casting long golden shadows across the courtyard, Sara felt the day slowly winding down. She and Megan walked together toward the bus stop, the air warm but touched with a soft breeze that carried the distant sound of someone playing guitar near the library steps. The campus no longer seemed like a maze, more like a place full of corners she hadn't explored yet, but would, little by little. "So," Megan said as they reached the walkway lined with maple trees, "how's the first day treating you now?" Sara thought about it. The confusion in the cafeteria, getting lost trying to find Building C, the shaky introduction in class, even the small coffee disaster. If someone had listed all those things that morning, she would have expected to feel defeated. But instead, she felt proud. "Honestly," she said, "it was scary. But good scary. Like I'm doing something important." "You are," Megan said simply. "Showing up is already a win." They reached the bus stop, where a few students waited, some listening to music, others scrolling through their phones. Sara stood quietly, soaking in everything around her, the laughter from a group nearby, the rustle of leaves, the hum of distant traffic. For the first time, she didn't feel invisible. She didn't feel like an outsider looking in. She felt like someone at the very beginning of a long, promising journey. "Do you want to hang out tomorrow after class?" Megan asked suddenly. "There's a club fair. Lots of free stuff. Also, I refuse to go alone." Sara smiled widely, warmth blooming in her chest. "I'd love to." The bus pulled up with a gentle screech, its doors folding open. Students boarded one by one. When Sara stepped inside, she chose a window seat. As the bus pulled away from campus, she watched the buildings grow smaller, their shapes blurring slightly in the warm afternoon light. She thought about her morning self, nervous, unsure, afraid of making even the tiniest mistake. That girl still existed, but she wasn't in control anymore. Today she had asked for help, spoken in class, made a new friend, and laughed, really laughed. She had survived discomfort, confusion, and embarrassment. And she had kept going. As the bus rolled down the street, Sara whispered to herself, "I can do this." Not because everything went perfectly. Not because she suddenly felt fearless. But because one day, one imperfect, challenging, surprising day, had shown her that she was stronger than she thought. And tomorrow, she knew, would be even better.